Trinity Fremont, we know that faith starts in the home. We also know that it can be difficult to take what we hear on Sunday and live it out in our homes the rest of the week. That's because information alone doesn't lead to growth and change. But information that's reflected on and put into practice is much more likely to lead to growth and change. Join us as we reflect on this past Sunday sermon and give practical starting points to help you live it out, your faith, in your family, and in your community.
Turn the volume down. If we're too quiet,
how about
you can
now?
Turn the volume up.
There you go. How about now? Can everybody hear us now?
Can you hear me? Yes.
I can hear you.
I'm having difficulties today.
It's okay.
It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday, y'all.
Happy Tuesday.
I bet nobody heard anything we said. That's all right.
I don't know.
Sometimes technology works.
And
Sometimes technology doesn't. So Saturday, speaking of technology not working, Saturday as we got ready to worship, one of the tech gals who's just fantastic. She's come to me. I came up to make sure that they knew what was going on with the sermon and all the text that all the space bars that they needed to hit through the sermon. And then she said, I haven't gotten that nudge from Facebook that we're live. And I went, oh. I went up. Nope, not streaming. So at 5:59, the minute before, it's a now scramble to try and fix everything, and we got
you love when that happens.
got it fixed because we turned something off and then back on. But then the sound wasn't working very well, so then we turned that off and back on. And so by the time we got to the sermon,
It was
working, but it was frustrating. Technology works when it works.
When it works. But what's funny is that this usually is set up all the time the same way, but I had to take it apart because we're recording a song.
Which song are you going to hint us? Not us, because we actually just heard it, and it was fantastic.
It's for Easter.
It's for Easter.
So it's for the Fremont Prayer Breakfast, and we get Trinity's worship team gets to be, I don't know, not sponsored.
Leading?
It's not sponsored. What is it?
Featured.
Featured. That's the
There
word
you
I'm
go.
looking. So
Thanks,
we're gonna
Casey.
be doing Living Hope, and we recorded it, and it's not. And I gave a preview to the guys here, and they all thought
It's good.
They all thought it was
You'll want to
horrible,
wear
and they threw.
headphones and turn it up.
Yeah.
Turn it up.
Yeah, we were rocking out to it over here, almost as much as we were rocking out to the song that I led with, that I opened, that I thought was the greatest song, and then now Living Hope is like, if Here's Jesus doesn't change the theme song of National Lutheran Schools Week for us this week. If Here's that, then Living Hope's probably right here. Just FYI.
It's a good song. I would play it, but I'm afraid I'm going to get echoes.
No,
It's a
not
good
We'll
message.
get copyright dings. I'm sure that's what it would be.
Horrible.
Yeah,
it's
we'll
going
probably
through
get
my
copyright.
head.
Jesus doesn't change.
Oh yeah, let's sing it.
It's the
Let's sing it.
same.
No, get it out. Come on.
Yesterday,
Nope,
today, and
nope.
forever.
That's great.
It
Let's,
is really
Jesus
just chanting in a song.
let's
What?
keep on
It's
doing
just
this.
chanting, really.
It really is.
It's the same note over and over and
No,
over.
it's stuck in
This
there. Can we
note
talk about
doesn't
something else
change.
now?
Well, no, we
Where's
can't.
the food
Yes,
talk?
we
Let's
can.
talk
Yeah, I was
about
gonna say,
food.
we haven't mentioned food yet.
We had opening chapel for National Lutheran Schools Week, and I've actually been calling it local National Lutheran Schools Week because National Lutheran Schools Week was in January, but we decided let's do it in March. Weather might be nicer. And it is.
It's Trinity's National Lutheran
Yes.
School.
And so we kicked that off last week, and we had two different chapels. We had the Big Kid Chapel and the Littles Chapel, and it was really fun watching that being played for the big kid chapel because they all just went, Paul, show us the face that they all would have made.
That's about accurate.
Yep. And then the little kids, they have claps that go with it. Like they loved it.
I'm just picturing like the 8th graders.
Oh my goodness. The 8th graders.
The 8th graders would rather have
Take
a
my
root
word
canal
for it. It's
than
probably
sing
the
that
worst song you've ever heard.
I don't know all the 8th graders, but I know a fair amount
Yeah.
of them. And the ones I know, none of them are going to enjoy that.
If you have a kid between the ages of 2 and 7,
No.
Yeah.
search
My son would not like this. song.
Maynard's
was
Groovy
clapping.
Bible Tunes.
Was he clapping?
Yes.
Jesus Doesn't Change.
My son doesn't know songs.
He was so excited about this song.
Search Maynard's Groovy Bible Tunes.
That's the truth or not.
But that's what we're gonna say. Jesus doesn't change, and your life will change.
I will. You know
One
what?
way or another.
I will put the link in the chat.
In the chat, there you go. Jesus doesn't.
Stop.
There's the link, everyone.
Stop.
You guys have fun and listen.
There you
It's
go.
going to be in the head all day long. And that's
day
not going to be fun.
But
There you
it's
go.
Yeah.
true.
Anyways,
But
what
it
are we
is
talking
true.
about
Well, it
today
is
besides this
Jesus.
song?
Jesus.
And that he doesn't change.
No, he doesn't.
And the
So-
storm,
The
storms
storm,
or something.
storm.
the
Storms,
storm
yeah.
may change, but Jesus doesn't change.
No. So we talked about the perfect storm, and we looked at, as we've been following Jesus on these places of the Passion, we went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's the place where there's this perfect storm in Jesus' life where all of these different things kind of come together. And so that's where he was betrayed by his someone he calls friend, by Judas. He was arrested. There was an assault, and then he was deserted by everybody. And so that's the perfect storm. And we got to see how Jesus responds in the midst of that perfect storm. And for Jesus, it was calm. It was with peace. And where we can take from that, where we can look to that, is that Jesus. Why are you looking at me all funny?
I'm not looking at you.
Paula just looks so happy today.
There you go.
Sorry.
Jesus is in control. That's really where we came to, is that Jesus is in control in the midst of our perfect storms. And we talked last week a little bit how some of us, other than Stacy was in a great place. A lot of us were in some storms. And the natural way of life for us, the way that the world would tell us to do, kind of our natural instinct is when storms are happening, it's for us to take control. I need to take control. I need to make sure that I'm doing all of this stuff to make the situation get better or whatever. But what we find is the best way to move forward in the midst of a storm is to give up control, to give that control to Jesus and let Jesus take the wheel.
All right, good podcast. See you guys later.
All right.
All right, peace out. We're done.
How does one do that?
I'd like to
Yep.
know that too.
How have you done that?
I
here's
haven't.
here's the
I
thing.
cannot give up control.
A lot of times we
Surely
ask
you've done
that
it at least
question.
once.
Tell me
I guess
exactly what that
childbirth,
looks like.
I didn't have control
Oh
over
my
that.
goodness.
Well, I'm just saying.
Let's go there, ladies.
I needed something.
Tell us your story,
No, I'm not
Lacey.
telling you my story, but that was kind of out of my control.
It's true.
So that's the only. Paul's looking at me like, "Oh dear Lord, this is all she could think of."
No, but like I don't think we can say, oh, well, this is first you do X and then you do Y and then you do Z and that is how you give up
I
control.
would start at A and then B.
See, that's the problem. I started at X and that's why you can't do that. But
Jesus
if you do
is A.
and then
You know, the thing
he's
is,
the Alpha
I have
and the
control
Omega.
over that, so I'm going to start at A.
There you go.
If your A's that good, then maybe it will work.
All right, maybe
every
I'll
time.
start at
What
at
if your
K.
spreadsheet goes all the way out to then you're in double A's?
Yeah,
and-
then you have too big of a spreadsheet. You should
Oh,
probably
That's
stop
too
doing
complicated.
Okay, well,
I love spreadsheets. They're the greatest.
I guess that grade book's just going to get thrown right out the window because that's where we are.
So it really, honestly, it does depend on. I mean, it's going to be fluid depending on your situation. Giving up control doesn't mean like, all right, I wash my hands of this. See you later.
not giving
Jesus,
up, it's-
Jesus, do it.
Math. Come on, Jesus, do my laundry.
Right.
Or my dishes.
Or just everything.
But it's really, so let's,
All right, we'll bring it back around.
yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to
He's
talk
trying to
through
be
y'all.
so serious.
I'm
Yes.
trying to talk through y'all.
All right, let's try again.
So, for example, we've been going through a couple call processes at Trinity looking for a principal and a couple teachers. And there have been many times where, like, even before we started it, before we put the committees together, I'd done some searching in the Lutheran school database and all of, every commissioned teacher, they fill out this big long form, and you kind of get to know who people are through what they say about themselves. And so before the process, I kind of was like, well, this is who it should be. And the times that I tried to push that in the discussions were the times that there was this tension and this angst and this frustration. And the times where I was able to just step back and say, you know what, this is who I think would make the best principal. However, this might not be God's will. And so I need to take a step back. I need to seek God's will. Yes, I need to ask good questions. Yes, I need to at some point have an opinion, but not try and say, like, let's do whatever we can to make sure that this is the person that we call. And so it's, for me, it did take, and I had to talk with, somebody else who helped me in that. And we kind of helped each other through that okay, let's take a step back. Yes, this is where we think the direction should go, but maybe some of this tension is God saying this isn't the direction, or maybe some of the tension is saying, just be patient. Let's work through this. Let's have some more conversations, and maybe that will help everyone be able to come to an agreement. So that's one specific example in terms of what does that look like to let go, to release control. It's not coming into that situation telling God, this is what we're going to do. This is the best plan, is for you to do, for this to be the next principle.
Dan has a comment.
Fantastic.
Here.
Hi, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Life is a storm. Always. We have to look elsewhere. All right.
There you go.
Nice podcast.
Guess-
We'll see you next week.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we're good.
Thanks, Dan.
We'll end it right there. No, I think life is a storm. It's a kind of a cluster of storms. Every day it's a different one, whether it's a good storm or a bad storm. I know that makes absolutely no sense, and Lacey's just doing her rambling thing, but it's the truth.
There you go. Lacey rambled the truth.
I rambled the truth.
No, you're right. And that's what kind of how I ended the sermon is we're all in one of three places. We're either headed into the midst of a perfect storm, we've just come through a perfect storm, or we're right in the middle of a perfect storm. And I've talked to a number of families, even in the last couple of weeks, that are just like, oh, here's my storm. Here's my storm. Here's my storm. And part of it is like, oh, I'm good. I'm going to take your storm on me. And not that I like, so if you hear that, don't like, oh, I shouldn't tell Pastor Gerber what. No. That's not what I'm saying. I want to be able to help you walk through that storm, but I need to remember that doing that is me pointing you to Jesus and not me fixing it. But good thing for me, my natural tendency is not to try and fix things, huh? Right, honey?
Biting my tongue.
Oh, that's what that was.
I was trying to get the visual since we have that, but then it just sounded really weird.
It's
Our
biting my tongue.
listeners who only do podcast version
You're
are going to be a
welcome.
little confused.
You're welcome
Like,
for that
what was that?
sound effect. No,
I think
Anthony
you can
doesn't like
help.
to fix things.
Well,
You can
and
help people through their storms, whether you're there for emotional support, physical support. You can say something, you can do something. I've got a friend that did something that nobody really wants to ever do, and so I'm just there for her, and she knows once the ache goes away, it'll be okay. But you got to get through that.
Well, on top of that, you talk about storms, and it might just be a guy thing, but like when you see, it's like if you see a shelf broken, what do? You fix the shelf. It's like, I see how I can help you fix your problem, so I'm going to reach out. But one of the things I've learned, the period of COVID really taught me, is that storms can be almost bigger in the emotional arena than anything in what I'll call the physical arena. Like you can do all the things to fix your problem, so to speak, but the storm is still there emotionally, and that can be the hardest thing to weather. And there's no amount of advice, there's no amount of fixing it. Sometimes you just have to weather that. And as someone who my natural intentions are to try and fix what's off balance, and it's been a struggle for me, both in seeing in other people and seeing in myself, that you can't always fix that. You have to literally ride that out, and especially because there's no jigsaw puzzle for the emotional side. Sometimes it's just you have to sit with it for a while.
Yeah. And some seasons are just harder and they demand more of us. This morning on the way to school, we were talking about, Landon had a question about something about you. And basically
I wasn't there, so
I don't remember how we
Dad
got
have no
there.
hair?
No, but I think it was plant sale related.
How
Why
are
does he like petunias?
Is our video up yet? I'm like, I don't think so. Dad had a meeting last night, and I don't think that it's been posted yet. I said, well, he's been busy lately. It's been a busy season in Lent and trying to find a new principal and a new teacher and other things. And Landon said, is this COVID related? I said, actually, no, it's just the timing of things. I said, sometimes there are seasons in life that are just a lot, and it's not anybody's fault necessarily. It's just the way it all works together, and
Then
we
here's-
just go with it. Like,
Here's my explanation for it. Landon, you're going to have to do it old school and walk down the
Well,
street
right?
and go,
that was, how many sales did we get?
hi,
I said,
my name is Landon, and
Yeah.
I am selling plants to earn a projection system for the gym.
Right.
Would you like to buy one?
and that's what I said. How many did we sell, Mom? Like, well, your video's not up yet.
Yeah.
And you didn't go anywhere.
That's
so,
right.
So
zero.
none. So
So somehow we got one.
if you out there would like to purchase plants from Trinity's plant sale, we should probably put that link in this as well.
Do I have the link?
I'll send it to you
I'll send it right now.
on my phone.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
can do that.
Send it
Go
to
for it.
me in, you know what? Send it to me in
Email it, right?
email it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do that.
It's actually, yeah. So if you would like to support, so there is this big battle.
I'm not certain I have that information.
The last
Don't think it's a big battle. I think we know the winner, but
the 2 years, there is
Jesus.
one student
Jesus is the winner.
who crushes plant
Yes.
sales. She does a
She's
fantastic job. She makes videos, she goes door to door, she talks to people, and she sells. And our kids, she loves it. Oh, she's just so
Yes.
passionate about it, and she helps with all of the stuff afterwards. But our kids yesterday had a very long conversation about how can we beat her.
First, you got to go out. And
First, you got to sell one. That's a good start. But they like, well, should we? Because there's two of us. Do we split the? Do we split the sales and so they're all going? They decided that they're gonna all sales should go towards Alex Gerber, and then they'll if they win a prize they'll split it. Lacey, I believe that your children had the exact
Yes,
same conversation
They
yesterday.
did. And now I'm almost thinking that the Steamers and the Gerbers should pair up. And then when we win,
Four
we can,
against one.
4
we
against
can
1.
split that $200 first place prize. Cold hard cash this year.
That you're completely going to donate back to Trinity.
Well, yes, I
the
would.
children.
It's for the
It's
children.
for the children.
Paul, I'm trying to send you this link right here.
That's awesome.
Plant.
There you go. So yeah,
Trying to
My
control
son
the
said,
outcome.
my son asked me if we can watch Raya the Dragon thing on Disney Plus. I'm like, no, it's $30. He's like, I'm going to sell plants so I can give you $30 so we can watch this movie.
No, you need to go to the Fremont theaters.
Yeah. Either way, I'm not watching the movie.
Well, he can come with me because Hudson wants to go see it.
He does want to go see it.
Well, I'll take Will with me.
Okay.
So there
To
we
the
go.
Fremont theaters.
Perfect. To the Fremont theaters.
You should go watch that at the
Just
Fremont theaters.
So they are
Advertising.
If you
playing.
feel
Hour.
safe.
It's a very that movie. Well, Disney itself is very contentious with all the movie theaters right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. It's very interesting what's going on.
I have no idea what you're talking about because I
Anyways,
stay
it
off.
Look
has
it up,
nothing, it has nothing to
Lacey.
do with anything with anything we're talking about. So
So how's it going?
So storms.
So there's some storms brewing there.
There's a
Yeah.
did you send my email?
well, yeah, but there's a
There's
child.
a child.
There's a
here.
child.
Why is she not in school?
She doesn't feel good.
Oh, hi, Leah.
Lee, you want to come on the podcast? We're recording right now. We're live.
Do you need something?
Do you need me? You need me?
All right, go
Maybe
be dad.
She does.
All
Go
right.
be dad for me.
So I will
Just
get the
check.
link. I will get the
Yeah.
link, but I'll be right back. Everyone else, talk amongst yourselves.
If everything falls apart technology wise,
It's out of
Stick
Paul's
with us.
control.
yeah, we're gonna let Jesus take the wheel on the podcast controls.
Oops.
Oh, Stacy's already hitting the mic.
Sorry.
Ding.
Nope. Just keep talking.
Okay. So it's when we talk about control, that's really like, that is just about everybody's go-to. Like, I can fix it. Whatever it is, even if it's something that's not fixable. And Stacy and I, at times, I'm not as good about this as I should be, but there are times like when Stacy's talking where like I really need to ask the question, Stacy, do you just want to tell me this so that I know what you're thinking, or do you want me to fix it? I really don't need to ask that question because I know the answer.
9 times out of 10.
but it would be helpful for me if she would shut that down and just say don't fix it but if she just says don't fix it, then I feel like she's coming at me a little bit. So if I ask the question, then I give her the permission to say don't fix it.
No, I usually just start right off. I'm like, Jeff, I just need you to listen. I don't need a solution right now, but I just need you to listen.
I think that's what Casey was saying earlier, is it's not just, I know the solution to this problem,
Yeah.
but that doesn't fix the way that I'm feeling about
Yeah.
it. And I need to sit in that sometimes.
I remember I forget what the conversation was, but it was a year or two ago, and there was something going on at school where for my wife, if it was a student or a parent, there was just something that was rubbing her the wrong way, and I was like, well, did you talk to this person and with this person? You know, you should really look at me filing this form. And she's like, I've thought of that already. I just want to be angry. It's like,
Yep,
okay.
yep.
And
Okey-dokey.
that was the moment I learned I
fix
can't.
it.
No, I don't work at the school. I don't know these things. My wife has probably thought of them 10,000 times before I did.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is helpful. But most of the time, we get there on our own. Right.
Yeah. And it's better when you do get there on your own.
In the right timing.
So then the other option I usually have is I go into active listening.
Oh, gosh.
So
Can you show us how you actively
I was gonna say,
listen?
So what I
does it
hear
leave
you
something to be
saying is that
desired?
you'd like me to
it's
show
the
you.
face too.
So what I hear you saying is that you'd like me to show
And then I'm
everyone
just
how
done.
how I active listen. Am I understanding you correctly? So I took one.
Yes.
So here's, I know, and this is okay. A lot of people want to come to talk to pastors thinking that we're counselors. Pastor Hoyer is much better in that than I am. I have taken one counseling class.
Ooh, we're tied.
Yes. Right. And so it's a P-min something pastor as counselor. And when we had this discussion on active listening, the professor was very clear. Now, do not go home and practice this on your wife.
So what did
So
Anthony do?
guess what I did?
He went home and he practiced on his wife.
Just for fun.
And
Practice
there's a
hasn't ended.
reason why the professor said this.
Listen to your teachers. Listen to your mentors. They may know what they're talking about.
Oh yeah, I
Are
wasn't.
you sure?
I wasn't seriously
I don't know.
trying to, but I
No,
was just.
yeah.
That is not how I would active listen when I'm.
I think he would do better with other people.
I just exaggerated a little bit with my wife.
So is that part of the perfect storm, coming out of the perfect storm and handling the perfect storm, is talking about it?
That's a big part
other
of it.
people?
Yeah.
I think
Community.
I think each person has to handle that differently because each person, just as we one of the popular things that you'll hear in couples counseling or premarital counseling is love languages. There tends to be 5 of them, and each of us express love in different ways. I think each of us experience storms and how to get out of them very differently, because what bothers me is not going to be the same thing that bothers Paul or Stacy or anyone in
that. Sorry. Yeah.
like how like I mean, you look at just one of the cool things this weekend that we had an all church and school planning meeting where people from the different boards came together and tried to look at where's Trinity going, what are some of our common goals. What was interesting is all of us what was really cool to see is a lot of the group identified the same things we want to be pushing for. Like, it was incredibly encouraging.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of a people watcher, and I like to see how tendencies work. And it was interesting. You could see, even though the group was tending to come up with the same ideas, each person was processing it very differently. And I think that speaks to also how we deal with storms. During this period in my life, I'm a trained DCE, but DCE is not what I'm doing full time right now.
Director of Christian Education,
Yes.
for you non-Lutherans out there.
Yes, that thing. But right now, my full-time job is insurance work, which is 100% commissions. And DCE work tends to be 100% salary. So it's a very different perspective on income. And, you talk to different people, and some people are like, man, a salary is so nice. You know exactly what to expect. And then you talk to other people like, commission is awesome. You bet on yourself. And if you're the best person, you bet on yourself. Yeah. And I'm like, just in that alone, it's like, I don't know what side to embrace. Because exactly. And that's kind of what I've done. But how people process even that situation, a big life change in how money comes in, was very different. So it's how we come out of storms, I think, can be very different for each one of us, and what we learn from it, what tears us down in them. It's I think life, and in some situations the devil likes to brew up the perfect storms for us, just for us, because he knows how to get at us.
Yeah.
I might have missed this because I was gone, but the way that you talk about processing, one of the big things I think of when I have storms is being brutally honest with myself and being brutally honest with the situation. And even if because a lot of times, some of the storms I feel like that I'm in is because I made them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the situation going, all right, was I a jerk? Was I the one that started this? Is the decisions that I've made causing these ripples that has brewed into the storm now? Trying to take some ownership of it. And I mean, did you guys talk about that at all when I was gone?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
Nope.
Oh,
But I do that
It was
too.
on my list.
We were waiting for you to get back to talk about it.
Oh, good.
So Paul speaking. No.
Well, I try to be honest with myself, because to be honest about honesty, I feel like if you're not honest with it, you're not, because I think that's where when you sit, you're giving up control, putting it over, is just sitting there going, I honestly, it's my decisions, my sin, and my way of looking at this is causing this to be worse.
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking about giving up control, it's like I'm going to have to let that part of me that's causing this pride or jealousy or whatever. I'm not saying that all storms are mine, but I can say probably a majority of them could be caused by me.
I think all of us could probably say that about the storms in our lives. And one of the things that we talked about with the storms, it was the and. that is such a small, it's a 3-letter word. If you want to go in, in Spanish, it's a 1-letter word. So it's a tiny word, but it's and E, the letter Y. But it's such a tiny word, but it can be so big. Like when you've got this thing that you're struggling with, you can probably get through that. But when it's this thing and this thing and this thing, that's where it weighs on you. And so that's part of that where the give up control is realizing I can't take on all of this. I just can't. And sometimes I think even the storms can be good in realizing that, like, just, we talked about some of the calls and stuff that we're working on. I just had to at one point say, hey, Dan, hey, Pastor Hoyer, can you lead this one? I need to step back. I need to take some meetings off. I need to try and be home with my family on one night a week. Can you? And he's like, yeah. And I've been able to actually step away, and that's been good for me, and it's been necessary for me. But as we talk about how we process it differently, one of the things that I'm working on with our school staff is we're going through the being challenge. We've talked about that a little bit ago. It's the red letter challenge, but now it's going into the 5 targets, and starting with that first target, the target of being. And I like the way he says that we need to be like Jesus so that we can be like Jesus. We need to rest like Jesus so that we can be like Jesus. And in the being challenge, we look at 5 keystone habits of Jesus, 5 things that were important to him in the midst of storms. And I pulled it up because we're only halfway through. But commit to community, study scripture, prioritize prayer, seek solitude, and choose church. And as I was looking at those, I'm like, well, commit to community and seek solitude, those don't seem to fit together. But there are those times where we just need to sit, to sit with Jesus and our Bible and just be by ourselves. But then there are those times where we need to be surrounded by a group of friends, like 3 friends or 12. But then there are times, or 5.
And do a podcast together.
Yeah. Yep. But then there are times where you need to be surrounded by even a bigger, like that's the church body, your congregation. You just need to be surrounded and encouraged by people. And that's what, this weekend, our 10:30 service, there were nearly 100 people in person, and maybe almost a quarter of them were ones that weren't connected to Trinity before COVID.
At least I didn't recognize them.
And so,
I noticed a couple of new faces.
And so that's been really interesting, to kind of see how that started to kind of come back, and why, talking to some of the families afterwards, just, hey, what, some of it's, we just moved into the backyard, Trinity's backyard. And so it's just really convenient. For others, it's, we've been here for a while. We just, over this last time, we've really lost connection with and I know there are going to be some at Trinity who will be able to say, they'll connect with another church and say, during this time, we just lost connection. But, we need all of those, the scripture, we need prayer, we need community, we need solitude, we need church in those different seasons of life, to help us through those storms.
Well, and I think along lines of control, you look at, I think we like to trick ourselves into thinking we have way more control of a situation than we actually do.
What?
And we like to picture that we do. And COVID has been a big teacher in the fact that I have less control than I ever thought I did, which I didn't really think I had that much anyway. Going back to kind of where I'm at career-wise, that was one of my biggest lessons about a year ago at this time, because, oh my gosh, it's been a year.
Yeah.
But let me preface what I'm about to say by I am 100% happy at Trinity right now. I love what I get to do. But there's a piece of me that, I do miss full-time DCE work on some level. So it's not anything of where I'm looking to change things. But in my mind, I'm like, what helps me feel in control of the situation is having multiple options. That way I don't feel stuck. It's like I call it situation claustrophobia. It's like I feel closed in by the situation. I could be in a small room and be just fine, but if my situations box me in, I don't like it. And so I imagine for a lot of listeners there, not whether you're in a church or not, the COVID situation definitely made you look at your budget, whether it's personal or business or anything like that. And so a lot of churches, if they were looking for a DCE, stopped doing that. So I wasn't looking to leave. My name wasn't out there at all, but it's like, now there's no way to do full-time DCE ministry if I wanted it.
Yeah.
It's like, now I'm boxed in. What do I do? And in my time of solitude, it took some wrestling with God to go, well, the options aren't open right now, but what can you do? You can love people right where you're at. And for me, that was a tough thing to realize. Like the little control I thought I had, it's not even there, but God still provides ways to get through it on some level and to still love those around you.
Yeah. I think we're all looking for that sense of control. I want to control everything. And for me, I think part of what I've been learning this last year or so is there are things I can control that make it easier to give up control to God. So I can control, when do I wake up in the morning? What does that look like? How am I getting my housework done? How am I spending my time with our kids? Are we eating a certain meal that's nourishing and feels good? Like there are things within my day that I can control. There's been a lot of pizza this last year.
Pizza.
Can I control that it's an easy meal and we don't have to make a mess of the kitchen and less clean up later? Like pizza. We do that a lot.
Delivery.
Like there are things that are not bad to control, right? And if we intentionally set that up, so I'm controlling this aspect of my life more so I can not be crazy about everything. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And when I'm feeling like, okay, I know there are things that are going to throw off routines sometimes, but if I get up at this time, I'm going to start our morning off. I keep hitting it. I'm sorry. If I can control how the morning starts a little better, then that makes me feel more ready for the rest of the day. And especially if I can get time with the Lord in the morning, which I'm not a morning person, so that's like really hard for me. But even just listening in the car to Christian music and the morning conversations that they have, like that's good for me to set the right tone for the day. And then I'm looking for God and looking in those situations that arise that I'm like, oh, I need to control this. But I've been reminding myself all morning already that God's in control. I can trust him and I can walk with him through the day. So that's one way that I give.
That's the reason why I get up in the morning to work out. Mm-hmm. I was watching this video, and it was a while ago. I'm not sure if it was from a speech from maybe a Naval Academy graduation. But
I know this one.
Getting up and making your bed every morning.
Yep.
Is that
I do that.
You do that?
I do.
I
make my
wish
bed
my
every
kids
morning.
would.
And then people laugh at me because I'll put all the pillows and stuff on it and I make my bed and it looks.
Me too.
In the Naval Academy, they did not put a bunch of pillows
I'm
on
sure
there.
not, but
That
it
was
upsets
not.
the
It wasn't
husband.
to make it pretty.
He's like, why
Combat
are you
ready.
putting these pillows on here? And I'm like, because it makes
it
the
looks
bed
pretty and you feel good about the way you start.
But that's why I get up in the morning. I mean, you do these things to get yourself going. Mm-hmm. And it's nice. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I seem more focused during the day. Mm-hmm. Yep. Tuesdays, we've got this. It's kind of like, Thursdays.
And those days feel different, right? Those days where I get up and I'm, okay, here's what we got going on, and I'm moving and I'm more focused. It's the days where I'm out of that routine where I feel more scattered everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think most humans are wired that way because it does help us cope on some level. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm not a parent on any level, but one of the things that I picked up from parents of young kids is apparently kids love to watch the same movie or TV episode over and over again. Is that?
Let it go.
And that was my next example. What was really interesting,
No.
Frozen has tended to be the most popular one for, at least 10 years. But
yeah.
but what was interesting is when Frozen 2 came out, some kids loved it because, it's more adventures with Elsa and Anna and Olaf. Some of the younger ones couldn't stand it because Elsa and Olaf, they weren't doing what they did in the last movie. And part of the reason kids like to watch the same episode or movie over and over again is because they know what's coming.
Yeah.
They know the outcome. The characters the video does not change.
Yep.
The episode does. There's no difference. And so when Frozen 2 came out, for the kids that watch Frozen on repeat, 3 times a day.
This is different.
Yes,
Kids
I've
like
heard that 1,000
routine.
times.
But it was particularly for younger kids who anchor themselves around the repeated
Familiarity.
experience. Frozen 2 bothered them, not because of anything that was scary in the movie, but
bothered
because it
It
wasn't.
bothered me too.
Was out of
That's
the
because
routine.
But it
because the
wasn't.
adults don't have control
Yeah.
of the TV. It's the control thing.
That is actually not accurate.
So okay, this is I keep coming when I think control. I keep going back to one of the first sermons when I got out of seminary. I went to my congregation in Michigan, and one of the first sermons that the senior pastor there preached, the analogy, the image that he used has stuck with me. It's now 7 years later, but so he was talking about a little bit about control, not so much, but if you were to answer the question, who has more control, parents or children?
Children.
Really?
No.
Who has more responsibility? Who has more of all
Well, the parents do,
the
but
parents.
I feel like the kids are
Yeah.
like.
But really,
Until you find an app that you
They're
can
learning.
automatically shut off all internet access with a touch of a button.
Yep.
the,
I just shut our G.
You actually
what is it?
can.
Yeah, I do. I
GFCI
do it all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
What's awesome is that I have an Apple TV downstairs, and I have an Apple TV upstairs, and I have the app on my phone. So they're downstairs doing something, and I'll just turn it on and randomly shut it off.
I wonder if I can do that with the Fire Sticks.
Yeah, no, I don't know. They might be an app, and it doesn't matter. The point is that I
Can shut it off.
I just mess with
you
them.
have control.
Parents have more control.
So parents
Well, I
have,
have control to mess with their brain because they're like, "What is this thing shutting off for?"
but there's also that more responsibility, and so
Responsibility?
If
What's
you
that
think,
word?
If you think back to when you're a kid, Paul didn't work out today. He's a little scattered. If you think back to when you were a kid, and think to those summers when you were a kid,
Yes.
Okay.
when you just like
I'm bored.
left. No, shh.
Hold on.
No.
Go back in time.
I read a lot of books
Yeah.
and laid in the
I
hammock
played a lot of music
and
with
rode bicycles to my friend's house.
But you just went and did
drank
things,
water
right?
out of the garden holes.
Be home.
Oh, that was the
be home
coolest
by the
one.
time the street light came on. We were at a friend's outdoor birthday party the other day, and we left, and the street lights were on the light. And I said, "Oh, we should be home by now." And the kids looked at me like, "What are you talking about?"
What?
I lived in the country. There weren't street lights.
But you just
We
like
had one.
those summers as kids was just so free,
Yeah.
right? Because you had no responsibilities.
Yeah, but you're also
you just did. You just went and
just
you were
were
a
a
kid. But there was always this like, oh, I can't wait till I can be an adult and I can get money and then you get all those responsibilities.
Yeah,
and
I
then
was-
it's not nearly as
That's cool.
fun.
Yeah, I was thinking of that with like snow days.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, it was like snow day, and you get to do whatever you want. But as an adult, it's like I gotta go out and shovel, and I gotta.
And the kids are going to want to.
All right,
Okay.
new debate: scooping or shoveling?
Shovel.
We
Shovel.
scoop.
Both.
Yeah,
Scoop to drive.
somebody keeps on saying
Snow
scoop.
blow.
I say
I was gonna say,
Well,
forget
let's
the
take that out of the
snowblower.
equation.
But so
I don't
let me
know, maybe it is shovel.
say go
finish
scoop
Jeff, what do we
mine.
Go
say?
shovel the drum.
We shovel.
Finish your thought.
Shovels. I don't know. Sorry, Anthony. The
I don't
things that
have
get-
control over this conversation.
Why? You
It's
don't
like
have
it's
control.
stuck in my head.
But so like we want this control, we want this responsibility, but what Jesus says is he says, "Hey, my yoke is easy. My burden is light." Like yoke yourself to me, and Jesus will take all of that responsibility. Jesus will take all of, and you can just go be a kid in summer, like to just live life and to love life and to be carefree and to enjoy his creation. And I still, he said it much more succinctly. Maybe it was because he was the one talking. No, just kidding. But it's just that picture of like, oh, that what Jesus calls me to is not the dad that's like constant, that's working 80 hours a week to make sure that everything gets done and is frustrated and struggling and gets home and sits on the couch for 5 minutes before he falls asleep. What Jesus wants for me is the kid in the middle of summer that doesn't have, that just goes and like has fun and loves. And that's not saying get rid of all of your responsibilities, quit your job, go on a walkabout. But that what I'm saying is Jesus wants us to just give him our junk and hand it over to him and to go
Be a kid.
be a kid.
Live abundantly.
Live life to the full.
And
John 10:10.
All right.
and talking
Good
about
job.
how
So
we
you just said to get rid of all your responsibilities, right? All right.
So does
we
that
just
mean
lost
that
our
you
producer.
Bye, guys.
This is fun, right?
Well, and
Do
going
what
back to
to
how
do.
how each of us processes things, the other thing I tend to do that I trick myself into thinking it's some semblance of control and it's not, is when I've done everything I can, I don't let it go. I like to sit there and worry about things as if my thinking about it will help control it anymore. Like very rarely has my thinking about it produced a brand new idea or a new scope of it. It's just made me more miserable and
Entrenched you more in a rut.
on top of that made those around me more miserable because misery does love company. It's a black hole that kind of sucks the energy out of a situation. But what I've learned is it's that same thing of giving it over to God. When I've done everything that's either humanly or responsibly possible, it means that for that day I've done what I can. And letting God have the situation is one of the most freeing experiences, but one of the toughest to get to. Like it is that kid in summer. It's, I've turned in my grades, it's the middle of June and school
Got an
is
F
2
in
months
art.
away. Yeah.
It's during my grades, got an F in art.
An F in art.
An F in art, otherwise known as a fart.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh, wow.
My microphone sounds really quiet today. I don't know why.
And now you're
That's
upset about the volume.
No, I'm just saying.
Stop taking
I don't
control.
think it's my headphones. You guys
No.
all sound good.
But
It's
so
fine.
Casey, I've got just for me that perfect example from that is Stacy loves it when I start thinking about things at 2 a.m. because I'm very calm and I never wake her up tossing and turning in bed.
My Tara would tell you the
Size.
same thing about me.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. So like there have been a number of times it's been really great for a while where I have slept well. But in the last couple weeks, there have been times where I've woken up and I start thinking, and I've told Paul this, when I start thinking, I might as well just get out of bed because I'm not going to start thinking. But one night I did. I got out of bed, I went to the couch, and I just pulled out a book. It's Peter Scazzaro, The Emotionally Healthy Leader. And I just started reading, and it wasn't long before I'm like, okay, all this other stuff is making me emotionally unhealthy. And so I just put the book down. I spent about 5 minutes in prayer, and then I was asleep and slept the rest of the night. And it was just this like freeing, like, that's what I needed. And the thing that I've been worrying about all night and not being able to sleep, I just I slept well. I was in a good place where, nope, God's got this, God's in control, and it went really well. It's interesting when we can it's like God keeps his promises or something. And that when we can actually give things over to him, he takes care of them.
You mean God does what he says?
I kind of think that not only have I seen that in my life, but I think like throughout history, yeah, he's kind of kept his promises.
Well, and you look at, we brought up several of these stories in past episodes of people kind of, what I say, putting their foot lightly in the water to test it. Like Gideon is one of those stories of, God says, you'll win this battle, and I'll supply you the army that you need. I think and Gideon's like, I think I trust you, God,
But prove it.
yeah. And then God proves it, and Gideon goes, well, that was cool and all, but one-offs are kind of a thing, so you have to prove yourself a second time. And, God could have said, dummy, I'm God, you listen. But God goes, okay, we'll do this again.
One more time.
This is fun. I'll keep doing it.
And I think that's God's attitude towards us when we fight for control that we don't have and that we can't get, is he still is faithful when we don't turn our problems over to him, when we like to sit and stir at 2 and 3 in the morning, because that's not the life that God wants for us on any level. And unless there's something you actually physically can do at 2 or 3 in the morning, that isn't that isn't relying on the yoke that is easy and the burden that is light. But God still doesn't say, you know what? You kept control from me one too many times. Life's on you now, buddy.
You know what? You know what's one of the biggest things that I struggle with is the preparing for the storm. I can see down the line going, okay, I see scenarios. Therefore, if this goes this way, this will happen because of personalities. But people, and if I go down this path or this decision, this will happen because of people. It always comes down to personalities. Like how do I get around that? Or anyways, the point is that I spent restless nights is most of the time I'm thinking of scenarios. Yeah. If this happens, then that happens, and that happens. If this happens, then this will happen, and that will happen. If this happens and that happens, then I will do this. Yeah. And I'm not. That's another form of control. Basically, trying to go. Yep. I'm going to try to preemptively put out fires before they even start.
And it never goes the way I'm like. I play it out in my head.
Well, and
that's because
and sometimes you ever had those arguments that afterwards you're like, I should have said that.
Oh
Yes.
That's what I do that a lot too. Yeah. Anyways,
if I had a time machine, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be changing the world.
You're wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. And anyways, so I spent a lot of time thinking about what could happen. Yeah. And then instead of living in the moment, I guess is a good way. Yeah. Even yesterday we were talking about the new stimulus package, and there's this whole thing with unemployment that's gonna, if you got unemployment now, some of it's not gonna be taxable in 2020's tax return, which we're in the middle of doing right now. So everybody's like, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, we don't even know how they might just have a credit next year, or they might say, go ahead and amend the 500,000 returns we've already done. I don't know what they're going to say. So should we lose sleep over it now? And they're like, no.
Yes.
Well, yeah, they want to say yes.
No, but yes, we're going to.
I'm just like, this was easy for me to go. Yeah. I'm not losing sleep over this. Yeah. But they were like, what should we do? And I'm like, we don't even know. It hasn't passed. And 2, we don't know how the IRS are going to deal with it. So just chill out.
And I think kind of the big elephant maybe in the room that we've talked around, but I like being in control. I know we've said I like having control. I like being in the position that I'm in our ministry where everybody looks to Pastor Gerber to take control and fix it until I give a different response than they want. But so even for me, when someone sends me an email saying, hey, this happened, can you fix it? It's really hard for me to say, well, why don't you have that conversation with them? This is whether it's, 2 people or 2 groups that are not seeing eye to eye. Yes, you need me. Let me go in. But it's really, no, just why don't you guys have the conversation? Because that's what's better. I don't need, if you have the conversation and you still can't come to an agreement, then let me come in and be a part of that. But, we made committees, we made groups so that the pastor didn't have to do everything. And so anytime there's any sort of anytime there's conversations that need to have, that need to be had, doesn't mean that, now, okay, pastor, fix it. No, you guys are adults.
Sometimes.
Have a conversation.
Sometimes I'm an adult.
But sometimes I'm like, well, if I let them have the conversation, then it's just going to get worse and it's going to be harder. But no, just be people.
Well, and along those lines, and along those lines, in my training to be a director of Christian education, I took you take several education classes. Probably good if it's in the title.
Yep.
And one of the things that you learn in education classes is people have different learning styles. So you need to teach in many different ways. The easiest default teaching method most people go back to is lecture.
Yep.
Why? Because you can control every word that comes out of your own mouth.
Yep.
You can control
That's
what
not
I have
accurate.
no control over the words
Paul
that come
can't
out
control.
of my mouth.
but you
I
have,
have
way
no control
No.
what comes out of this mouth.
that
It will
is
come out, and then I'm like,
Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
Yep.
also fair point. But at least on some level in a lecture, you have the control of the room. You what information goes into the students, you know what's coming. Even if it was a mistake that came out of your mouth, you can manage the mistake because you know the mistake that was made. But most of the best learning styles are the ones where you release control to the students, whether it's put them in pods, whether it's have them turn to their books, whether it's even have them take it home. Most of those open the door for other information to come in that you don't have control over. Those by far and away, studies show, are the best ways for people to learn, but they require the least amount of control for the educator up front. And it's one of the biggest reasons that people go back to lecture, because they have the control, but it's one of the least effective education methods because sometimes we're not the best person to put that information in. And I look at that as the same way in life. When we feel like we have control, when we try to take control, oftentimes it's not what's best for that situation. It can be best for pieces of it. But sometimes stepping back and letting things play out as God is in control, they happen far better than what I was about to do.
And that's confirmation. I mean, that's what we've tried to do with confirmation, is move it away from lecture and give it to people, give it back to parents, give it back to the students. And that was the biggest pushback was, but pastor, how are you going to control that they're learning what they're supposed to learn? My response was, they're not anyway. Because
Fair point.
But
if that's not how we learn by a lecture, then we're not going to learn it.
Right.
Regardless of if the right information is
Right.
taught that way.
But even then, that first year, we're still working through it. And we're going to, that first year, it still was, pastor, just tell us and then go tell our kids. And this year there's been just more disconnect because, COVID, and we're not in person for everybody. And that's a struggle. But we're starting to get going in that pattern of, it's more about the conversations that we have and not necessarily getting the right answer, but about coming together as a family and having these conversations and realizing that, when we can't figure out an answer, that yes, there's a pastor who is there who would love to talk us through those questions and help us to think through them differently. But, even when we do our small groups, when I have left the room. When we're in person, I leave the room. When we're on Zoom, I put them in breakout rooms. If they want me, if they've got a question, I can come in. But there's no control in that. And that's hard because I want to come in and hear what they're saying and let me correct that a little bit. Let me but no. Eventually you're going to be done with confirmation. And so I want to build up habits of you as a family having conversation around God's word, reflecting on it, and then putting it into practice. That's what this is also, the podcast. It's us reflecting on God's word that we heard on Sunday and then looking to put it into practice in our lives.
Let me ask you this, Pastor, because
Very official.
Let me sit up a little bit.
Official.
But in those moments, because there is times that people do need help understanding these things. How many times in those situations do people actually already have the answer internally that they're seeking from you, and you just have to guide them to find that?
It depends. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, and I mean, Lacey, we've talked a lot.
Oh, yeah.
The answer that you have is like, your default is, I gotta do good.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's your default.
To do good.
I do
Yes.
the goods. And so there is that correction that needs to be had and the conversations, but I can't just come and say, hey, Lacey, you need to knock it off. What I need.
That's what Paul tells me to do, which is great. So I appreciate that from Paul. Now you keep going.
But what's worked well is you getting information, and you as a family wrestling with it, and then coming and saying, hey, we've really been wrestling with this. Can you help guide us in this? But yeah, a lot of times it is, they know, I mean, generic answers.
It's good to do good.
Sometimes
Yeah,
it's
it
just
is good.
it's more of a
Good idea.
clarification.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we read this. This is what we think this means. Is that are we on
Yeah.
the same page, or are we over here in left field?
Yeah.
Left field.
Left field.
Left field.
Or is it right field? I don't.
Left field.
Either
Okay.
one.
Yeah,
I
you're
wore a
always-
Boston
you're- I'm
sweatshirt
just-
yesterday.
So did my daughter did too.
Yeah.
Oh, t-shirt with a hat.
Sorry,
And
sidebar.
she had the Boston Red Sox coof mask.
But now we'll go back to this. But no, it's more just a clarification.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I think that this means,
Right.
and I can't think of a situation for
Whatever.
some reason. It's just,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's what help us understand this a little bit better. But that's not where learning ends. That's not where growth
Yes.
ends in the understanding. That's part of the reflection process. But growth happens in practice, and it's hard to teach too, because I still want to teach information, because I like the information. But there are times where we'll get to the end of a class and I'll go like, I don't know how I'd put any of that into practice. And so then we kind of have to step back and say, all right, let's refocus, let's reframe. We talked a lot about baptism, but how does that help you to live differently? And then we maybe need to take another 5 minutes of discussion and kind of flesh some of that out a little bit.
That's the reason. A lot of stuff that I do, I try not to be. They might look at me as leader, but I'm basically trying to make sure that everybody in that room has a voice in their opinion, especially the way I look at the worship team. It's like, oh, well, I basically, I feel like I just kind of organize it and range it. Other than that, it's when we get there, it's like, how do you guys want to sing this? How do you want to do that? And I kind of use the principle. You guys ever heard of the scenario with the cow? I don't know.
It's Nebraska. I've heard a fair amount of them.
Yeah, well, basically, they have. I know there's a name for it, and I'm blanking on it. But if you have a cow, you have a whole group of people, and they basically say, "What's the weight of the cow?" You have the butchers that go, "Well, it's this," because they're an expert. They butcher cows, and then you have the people who have no idea, and they go, "It's 3 pounds." But generally, when you take all the people's and average it, the average of it is
pretty close.
Pretty close.
it's pretty close. And so when I look at everybody's opinion, it comes down to, it's like you have this extreme on this side and extreme on this side. But generally, when you look at everything as a whole and go, well, this is clearly closer to what we need to be doing than not. I try to look at that situation a lot that way, because I believe that we are all connected, and we're all put on this earth to be working together and be community together. And so therefore, this side can't be right and this side can't be right, but I mean as an aggregate all together.
Yeah.
That makes sense? Or am I just like
No, yeah,
No.
and I've seen it. I think it was Brain Games was the show, but they did that same. But it was with gumballs. estimating the number of gumballs, and I think the guy, I think he basically let everybody estimate the gumballs. He never saw the gumballs. He looked at all their estimates, and he ended up winning the estimation contest because he just took the average of all of them, and that was it. I think, I'm not 100% sure if that's how
this
that
concept works the same even on a political side of things. It's not just right or left. If you look at the aggregate and say, well, we should probably be looking here.
Yeah.
Or if we're looking at any situation, even a church council decision, you might have the extreme on one side and the extreme on the other side, but what's the overall group? Where are we?
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we can get past now, that's the hard part, is the people who are steadfast. This is I am right, therefore.
Yeah.
That's where problems usually end up. If you're allowed to give up grace and go, you know what, maybe this is the right way. Maybe my opinion is not 100% accurate, or not the best for this situation, or whatever. But I'm just trying to think of how, and it's still the same concept of giving up that control, giving up that.
Yeah.
I call it pride.
Yeah.
It's definitely a prideful thing.
Well, we're supposed to give that up too. So
What?
Man.
Everything's so hard.
Stacy, you took notes.
Well, I just wrote out some Bible verses last week, and Casey was talking earlier, and I was going to share, but then it just went a different direction. But he was talking about, when we sit in misery, like misery loves company, and when you're waking up in the middle of the night and your thoughts are going, Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And that's been helpful to me when I'm stuck in that misery and just yucky. Like, what is true in this? What is good and right and pure? And how can I redirect? And not that it's easy. That's hard to sometimes turn our minds in a different direction. But when we do focus on those things that are good and true, then we feel at peace and we can sleep better, and we are just ready to work with each other to compromise and find a common ground and
get ourselves out of the way.
right.
And that makes me Casey, I talked with your wife quite a bit during a lot of this process stuff, and
They're on the same council.
we're on the
or
same
call
committee. Yeah. And she brought up kind of the same idea, because like when we get anxious about things, anxiety basically is, and Paul, you were kind of alluding this to how you kind of sometimes go about things, is the what if, but it's always the what if it goes horrible. And that's where it's so hard to give up control, is because if I don't have control, all the what ifs that are going on in my head are disasters. What if this happens? It'll be a disaster. What if this happens? It'll be a disaster. Those sorts of things. But
I don't look at it that way.
Well,
I look at it
I
as
do.
what ifs. Well, and my thing is that I'm looking at it going, if this happens, I want to be prepared for
Right.
it. So therefore, even mentally prepared for it, because there's like even scenarios is like, and I think we all do this, even with individuals maybe in their hospital. We do sometimes go, okay, what happens if this does turn south? What do I need to do?
Well,
and maybe as a guy, I would have to prepare for that a little bit more. But
the meme that Tara sent me was like, anxiety is basically what if, and all the negatives come out. But what if you changed it to think of what if the good happens? And that was just like, I was like, oh yeah, all my what ifs are often negative. And so I feel more of that need to take control, to steer it away from those negative what ifs.
I guess.
But what if things go well?
And going back to what Paul was saying, those what if scenarios, I love running those. In fact, one of the things that helps me get ready is write them down. And that does actually take anxiety out. But it's like Paul said earlier, very rarely do even the negatives go, if they do turn that direction. What I plan to do is almost never actually what winds up happening. And the prime example for me was, we've been dealing with COVID for a year. So I kind of braced for the idea, what happens if you get COVID? What are you going to do? What plans are going to go into place? And I'm like, first off, I don't get sick very often. Like, Like,
So it won't happen.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'll be one of those asymptomatic people. Like, but before COVID, I ran one fever in 10 years. Like, I don't get sick. And so all of a sudden, I got COVID and I had symptoms. And one of them included a fever. And it meant, all of a sudden, all the things I thought in my mind, like, okay, prepare if you ever get COVID. I can tell you all the things I thought I would do if I got COVID.
You didn't do.
They were out of the window. It's
Yep.
like, it's,
Well, that's the thing. You prepare for these things, except that they don't happen on your timetable.
Yep.
So
Or on
you're like,
your
wait.
terms.
I wasn't ready for this. I was ready last week when I didn't have 15 things to do. Now I have
Yep.
15 things
And
to
I
do.
had dog food.
Yeah. And now I don't have dog food.
Bird food.
I was just saying,
Bird
we were
food.
out of bird food.
I'll bring you bird
Yeah.
food or
Thank
dog food.
I was supposed to get
Thank
I was
you,
supposed to get the
Stacey.
coof last week. Because
Yeah.
last week I didn't have
Yeah.
anything going on. This week
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff. Why do I have coof this week?
Yeah.
Oh, and then I have to wait 10 days.
Yeah.
Oh, because I don't want a Q-tip up my nose.
And kind of back to what Anthony was saying with the, you tend to what if, but your what ifs, even though you're trying to prepare for something that's going to happen, is usually the worst of the worst or a negative. Where I had somebody tell me when we were discussing something, I'm like, well, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if it falls down? What if nobody shows up? What if, and then she just looked at me and she goes, what if you succeed? She goes, what if it's fantastic?
Yeah.
What if it worked?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it would be great. And she's like, yeah, exactly. So why aren't you looking towards that when you're looking at this? Well, what if I run out of food? What if my dog runs over here? What if I forget this?
Yeah. And the other side of that coin is then after the event, I shoulda, coulda. woulda.
Yes, and I'll do
Yeah.
that too.
Those are the
because
worst
I'm
what
not-
ifs for me.
I'm not
What if I
overthinker,
had done
but
this? Yeah.
Yeah. What if I did this and
Yeah.
I should have done that and I could have done this.
well, then it turns into like a list of things to do for next time.
Which is interesting because I hadn't thought about that. That's still a form of control that we have no control. We're still trying to control something that we can't change.
It's like until Doc Brown invents a DeLorean time machine, we're not going anywhere. That's not.
Oh, there it is. Paul's gonna grab it.
Oh,
we
yeah.
can
have
go
one.
there. That's awesome.
Go back.
So
What was that? May. What is he advanced to? It was 2020.
2015.
2015. Okay.
yeah, it was
sorry.
a while ago.
Then there was a T-shirt floating around Facebook that says, "Marty, whatever you do not go back to 2020."
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah.
But like the past is the one like we can figure out what we can affect and what we can't affect. The past is the past. You are not touching.
in the past.
Well, and the thing about the past is that you can definitely look at decisions and then learn from them. That's the whole point
Yeah.
of making mistakes. That's the whole point of going through trials and tribulations. Is
the whole
so
point
we
of
can
grace.
grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
Do you
to grow
fail
from
forward?
Yeah, but don't sit there and beat yourself up, and then definitely don't do the shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
But I would say, all right, next time. Now I know this experience, how will I react next time, or if a situation's similar.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really is. Can you take these things and learn from them?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we try to
give up
control the
control.
past, which is the one area we absolutely have no control over. And we play the what if, woulda, shoulda, coulda about the past to make us feel like we have some sort of control over the thing we absolutely can't control. And I would say also it's God has given you grace. Give yourself some too, because unless you find yourself in heaven at the end of one of these moments, it means you have another day to get better. And if you find yourself in heaven, well, hey,
Then-
you're
You
with
can't get
Jesus.
better.
Yeah, I wonder if you're going to go. I guess I shouldn't have crossed the road right there. Yeah.
I haven't been to heaven, so
That was
I
a bad
cannot.
choice to go skydiving today.
I've never been to heaven, so I can't attest for this. But I'll put money on the fact that once you're in heaven with Jesus in perfect happiness, you're not second guessing yourself.
The problem is if you're putting money on it, you're guaranteed to lose your money when you go be with Jesus.
I won't care about money then.
So does that mean
But
you
won't-
lost the bet? Sorry.
No.
Okay. So
Philosophical question number 2. Right?
there you go.
Email us.
Yeah. So it's been I feel like we could talk about this forever, because
It's life.
It's life. It really is. And it's hard. And it goes against the grain of what we want, what we think is best. So how are you doing with all that? Like those of you out in the podcast world, how are you doing with control? And is your default to take control? When are those times though? When are those times where you've given up control, and how has that gone? And not necessarily, well, I gave up control to the other person who was leading the group and it was horrible because they made all, no, that means you haven't, how have you done and given up control to Jesus? And you know, what are some times in those that you've done that, and how have you seen that play out?
Yeah. And Dan has connected this with the plant sale. He basically asked the question, how do plants
do in storms?
He answers it right here.
You know what? I will say
they must be well rooted.
Dan, do
Speaking
you want to
of-
buy a plant for my
Speaking
child?
of plants that are well rooted, Janet's Jungle's plants have done really well for us. They've weathered
They've
some
blown
storms.
over multiple times
Yes.
and they still come back.
So
we have it-
Dan,
So reach out to Super Team Gerber Steamer.
There you go. Make sure you put a student's name in the box when you order online. Hudson Steamer.
Gerber, like the baby food and the knives and the toilets. All right, so with all of that, with us trying to control the outcome
Make the
of the
children
plant
do the
sale, let's.
They should sell the plant.
I want control.
You guys are bland.
Sorry.
Let's pray.
It's hard. Let's close our time together in prayer. Dear Jesus, we just thank you that you are in control, that you are the one that brings perfect peace in the midst of a perfect storm. But it's so often that we want to take that control away, and we want to make it ours. And that's where the struggles come. That's where the hurricane force winds come, is us trying to take control. So help us to give you that control, to give you our mess that you took to the cross, and just allow you to lead us. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks for joining us. And if you guys want to know about the plant sale, the link is in the chat below. And if you do all the social media things, you know what they are.
Yep.
Then do those things
You
too.
could even share
Yeah.
about the plant sale, or you can just reach out to me because I am the co-chair on the plant sale.
Or Stacy, who's also the co-chair on the plant
I don't
sale.
think I'm a co-chair. I just enter orders.
Too.
Your name is on the bottom
You
of the
know
letter.
what? Your name is on the bottom, so
that's
reach
true.
out
It is
to
there.
Lacey or Stacy.
I think Stephanie did
not
come on, and
Stephanie.
she said, Stephanie, that Kate welcomes the challenge. So let's go.
Yes.
Have
Thank
a
you.
great day, guys.
Have a good day. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week. We pray that the Holy Spirit has used this time to focus you in on the one thing that you can practice this week as you live out your faith in your family and in your community. If you found this helpful, feel free to share it with a friend. If you would like to support the work that God is doing through Trinity Fremont, you can text a donation to 1-844-353-5782, or you can give online at www.trinityfremont.com/donate.